Hello and welcome back to the classes of Mastering Biology. Let's learn biology in an easier way. All right. We were studying respiration in organisms, and today we will talk about the steps of respiration. All right. Now, respiration is just not one step process, many things are involved. So, we will have a look at them. All right. So, the heading for today is steps of respiration. The heading for today is steps of respiration. Now, respiration takes place in four main steps. The first step is breathing. We will discuss one by one all the four steps. The second step is external respiration. The third step is internal or tissue respiration. And the last one is the cellular respiration. Now, just to brief you that how these are taking place or how these are connected to each other, I will first just give you an overview about this and then we'll talk about each one of this in detail. All right. Now, see, the first step when I say breathing, breathing means simple inhalation and exhalation. All right. When you inhale oxygen rich air and when you give out carbon dioxide rich air, that is called as one breath cycle. All right. So, breathing involves two steps, which is inhalation and exhalation. Inhalation is intake of oxygen rich air and exhalation is giving out the carbon dioxide rich air. All right. Next is external respiration. Now, what is happening? You're breathing in and you're breathing out, but in between these inhalation and exhalation, these three steps do keep on happening inside our body. All right. And what is this external respiration? When you breathe in, the air definitely goes into the respiratory tract and ultimately to the lungs, where the gaseous exchange has to take place. So that part is included in external respiration. All right. When the gaseous exchange takes place in between the alveolar air and blood. So we'll have a look in detail along with the diagram. Then we have internal or tissue respiration. When I say internal or tissue respiration, that means the gaseous exchange which takes place in the tissues of the body and the blood. All right. And ultimately the blood will reach to each and every cell, where this fourth step of cellular respiration takes place. So let us quickly start with the first step of respiration, which is breathing. The first step is breathing. And as I told you, taking in of oxygen rich air and giving out of carbon dioxide rich air includes one breath. All right. So one breath is one inhalation and one exhalation. Fine. Now, what is happening during inhalation and during exhalation? See, there are some mechanisms, there's some muscles involved. The muscles which are involved here are the diaphragm muscles and the intercostal muscles. Diaphragm, I told you, is a dome-shaped muscular sheet that partitions the internal cavity of the animal body, all right? And that is the reason we have a thoracic cavity and the lower is the abdominal cavity, all right? Now, this diaphragm in its normal position, this is normally dome-shaped. This is dome shaped. I hope you understand what is a dome shape. Dome shape matlab aise, it's a little lifted like this. All right. So it is dome shaped. Intercostal muscles are attached to the ribs. All right. Intercostal muscles are attached to the ribs. So how they play a role in inhalation and exhalation, let us quickly have a look at that part. When I say inhalation, what happens? I'll just draw a rough thoracic cavity. This is the way the rib cage, this is the spinal cord, the vertebral column, then we have the rib cage, all right, and this is the way the diaphragm is placed, all right. Now, when we inhale, during inhalation, what happens? We take in air. How? Why is air rushing inside? The air rushes inside because the diaphragm and intercostal muscles contract. And you know what happens when these muscles contract? The diaphragm becomes flat instead of being dome shaped. And the intercostal muscles contract, causing the rib cage to be lifted outward and upward. All right. So this was the initial position before inhalation. And when the person inhales, or when the muscles and the diaphragm contracts, so what happens? The rib cage moves upwards and outwards and the diaphragm becomes flattened, increasing the thoracic volume. The volume of the thoracic cavity increases. All right. So when diaphragm and intercostal muscles contract, what is going to happen? Diaphragm becomes flat. The intercostal muscles contract and cause the rib cage to move outward and upwards. All right. So the rib cage moves outward and upward and the diaphragm is becoming flat. Thus what happens? Volume of thoracic cavity increases. Till here, I think these 4 points are clear because these are all related with diaphragm and intercostal muscles causing the movement of diaphragm and the rib cage. Okay. Now, volume बढ़ गया. What is going to happen next? When the volume increases, you know, air was present here in the lungs. So, when the volume increases, the air gets more space. As a result, the pressure of air inside the lungs decrease as compared to the atmospheric pressure. As compared to the atmospheric pressure, the pressure of air in the lungs, which is called as the partial pressure, this decreases. And you always know that the air will move from its region of higher pressure to lower pressure. As a result, air from outside rushes inside through the nostrils and enter into the lungs. So let us proceed here. Volume of the thoracic cavity increases. Partial pressure inside the lungs decreases. All right, as compared to the atmospheric pressure. As compared to the atmospheric pressure, the partial pressure is going to decrease. All right. Now, once the partial pressure decreases, I've already told you, air rushes in. That is, it results in inhalation. This is what is happening during inhalation. Because, see, we always think that we are breathing. No, when you sleep, do you even realize you're breathing? No, it happens automatically. It is involuntary activity at the time you're sleeping. All right, you can hold your breath, but that only for a few seconds. All right. So, inhalation and exhalation keeps on going on and on its own pace. And the reason is because of the difference in the partial pressure, which is created by the movement of this diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. Clear? Now, when I say exhalation, exhalation is exact opposite. Exhalation is exact opposite of inhalation. Exhalation means what? Giving out of air. So, why air will be given out? Now, see, this is the condition after inhalation has taken place. So, for exhalation has to happen exact opposite. That is, the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles relax. All right. As a result, diaphragm will become dome shaped. Clear? Then what will happen to the rib cage? Rib cage moves inward and downward. So, once the diaphragm again comes at this position, that is dome shaped, and the rib cage again moves inward and downward, what will happen to the volume of the thoracic cavity? The volume of thoracic cavity will decrease. Down arrow shows decreases. All right. As a result, now partial pressure is PP. Inside the lungs, will increase as compared to atmospheric pressure. Now what is going to happen? Now the air is given out. Air rushes out, resulting in exhalation. All right. So this is how inhalation and exhalation takes place. So this is the mechanism of breathing. That is the heading. Mechanism of breathing. So in your exam, this question is again carrying an important weightage because mechanism of breathing can be asked what happens during inhalation or compare inhalation with exhalation. So you can compare it in this way too. All right. So this is an easier way to maintain the continuity of points, memorize them and retain them. And even this is a good way of presentation. So you can make diagram like this if you wish, or the content would do its part. All right. Next, we move to the second step of respiration, which is external respiration. Now, when I say external respiration, I've already told you we have breathed in and we have breathed out. All right. So, external respiration means once breathing is done, the air will enter the lungs and ultimately in the alveoli. Ultimately in the alveoli, which is kept surrounded by the blood capillaries. All right. This blood capillaries brings in blood. Blood as in from where? It brings in blood from the heart. All right. Which carries more carbon dioxide than oxygen. The blood which comes to lungs, you know, it is sent for oxygenation. So, this blood is carrying more of carbon dioxide and less of oxygen. But you know, in alveolar air, oxygen is more. And what about carbon dioxide? It is present, but it is less as compared to blood. And now the process of diffusion will happen. That is, the gases will move from their region of higher concentrations to the region of lower concentrations. So what is going to happen here? Which gas is going to move where? Tell me. Oxygen will diffuse from the alveolar air into the blood. All right. And the carbon dioxide will move from blood into the alveolar air. So here what you have is the alveolar air. All right. And now what is going to happen to the blood? Obviously, the blood gets oxygenated and it has more oxygen than before and lesser carbon dioxide than before. All right. And this blood is sent back to heart in the left auricle. Clear? So this is the process of external respiration which is taking place in the alveoli. So how will you define external respiration? Exchange of gases between alveolar air and the blood carried by the blood capillaries. Am I clear? This is what is external respiration is. When the gaseous exchange is happening between the alveolar air and the blood which is carried in the blood capillaries surrounding the alveoli. So now you know why we were always saying that the respiratory surface should be richly supplied with blood capillaries, because the gases come in dissolved form in the blood. And here the gaseous exchange is going to take place. All right. Let us move to the third step of respiration, which is the tissue respiration. The third step is tissue or internal respiration. All right. So now what happens in tissue or internal respiration? Let's understand it first. The blood is oxygenated. The blood is oxygenated. It is sent to heart in the left auricle. From left auricle, it will go to the left ventricle. Through aorta, it is distributed to all the parts of the body. Right? Now, once it is distributed, what does it mean? Distribution means the blood capillary has now brought oxygen-rich blood, still having some CO2, all right, but more of oxygen, as you can see. And the cells of the tissue, since they were respiring, they have used up the oxygen and they are left with what? They are left with more of carbon dioxide in them and very little oxygen that might be present. As a result, you know, the gases diffuse from their region of higher concentration to lower concentration. And as a result, what is going to happen? The blood or the gases which were present in the blood now enter here, and the tissues get more oxygen for respiration and they get rid of carbon dioxide. That means the blood that is going to leave the tissue will have more carbon dioxide, little oxygen, and it is sent back to heart. It is sent back to heart. Which part? The right auricle. It is sent to the right auricle, all right, for oxygenation. So this is tissue respiration. This is the blood capillary, and and this one is the body tissue. So when the gaseous exchange take place, gaseous exchange between the body tissues and the blood capillary takes place. This is called as tissue respiration or internal respiration. It is very easy. As per the name, you just can remember. Why we are calling that external respiration even though it is taking place inside the body? Because the exchange is between the external air and the gases which are present in the blood. All right. This is called internal respiration because this is happening internally. Internally, blood has got the gases and the tissue has respired and exchange has taken place. So everything is happening inside the body. Nothing from outside is happening here. And so this is internal or tissue respiration. The last is the fourth step. The fourth one is the cellular respiration. Now, cellular respiration, you have already understood a part of it when you studied the aerobic respiration, that during cellular respiration, the oxygen is utilized to break down glucose and release energy. But you know, the cellular respiration, that means the oxygen that was given to each cell of the body will now be used to break down the food substrate, the respiratory substrate, and get energy out of it. This is actually happening in 3 steps. The first one is glycolysis. The second one is the Krebs cycle. And the third one is the electron transport chain. All right. Now, what is happening and where it is happening? Let us quickly have a look at this. When I say glucose, in the presence of oxygen, it changes into pyruvate or the pyruvic acid. And this step was known as glycolysis, which happens in the mitochondria. This pyruvate then changes into the second substance, which is called as acetyl coenzyme A. All right. And then this acetyl coenzyme A, this happens in mitochondria. The acetyl coenzyme A now enters the Krebs cycle. All right. So this is the second step which is happening in mitochondria. This is happening in cytoplasm. The Krebs cycle is happening in mitochondria. The pyruvate changes into acetyl coenzyme A and then it enters Krebs cycle. When it enters Krebs cycle, it gives out carbon dioxide. It gives out energy currency in the form of NADH2 and FADH2. These are actually the electron carriers. Along with this, electrons and protons are also given out. All right. Now, where is the role of oxygen? Oxygen to abhi tak kam mein nahi aayi. It will come now. It has a very important role. Although it is coming in the last, but it is coming in a very important role. Now, this oxygen will take both the protons and the electrons and results in the formation of water, and this is called as metabolic water. And why this is called as metabolic water? Because this is produced as a result of metabolism. Clear? So I'll just quickly explain this part again. The cellular respiration involves glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. The glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Glucose, in the presence of oxygen, we say it, but it changes into pyruvate. And this step does not require oxygen. All right? Oxygen is not required at this step actually. That is the reason we say glycolysis is common to both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. This is the reason we say that it is common to both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. All right. So now what is going to happen? The pyruvate enters mitochondria and changes itself into acetyl coenzyme A, where the Krebs cycle will start after acetyl coenzyme A. And what is given out is carbon dioxide, protons, electrons, and the energy currency of the cell in the form of NADH2 and FADH2. Now, these are similar to ATP. Yes, They also give energy just like ATP. फिर क्या अंतर है? ATP ही बना देते. No, there is a big difference. See, one molecule of NADH2 yields energy which is equivalent to 3 ATP molecules, and one FADH2 molecule yields energy which is equivalent to 2 ATP molecules. So the amount of energy which is generated is very much high, all right, by these electron and proton carriers. So this is how the protons, electrons which are released are finally accepted by oxygen, and this results in the formation of metabolic water. So this is the summary of your cellular respiration. So now you can come back to the first slide and recall that I told you that there are 4 steps of respiration. The first one being breathing, the second external respiration, third internal, and fourth cellular respiration. Because the ultimate aim of respiration is to generate energy. I hope I am clear with this life process, that is respiration. In the next lecture, we shall start with the third life process, which is transportation. So thank you for today.